line 31, replace honestly with honesty. Page 2, line 13, replace the that issues. And page 2, line 19, insert yet before to be examined. I need a motion to accept as amended by Tom. I need a second. Seconded by Beth. Are there any comments or additional concerns regarding these minutes? Okay, all in favor? It looks like we were all here, so 6-0. I didn't do introductions. I think we're good. Okay. Next, I need to look at the minutes from September 3rd, 2020. And there's no amendments on these, so I need a motion to accept as presented. Moved by Tom.
Second.
Seconded by Beth. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? And it's 6-0. Okay. And moving on, we have nominations, resignations, and correspondence. Is there anything that we need to be aware of?
Just an informational piece. Allison Bushman at the middle school will be taking a leave of absence for maternity in February, so you'll see that posting going up in the next few weeks. And we wish her the best.
That's great. Congratulations to her. When did
That's
you say
it.
it would start?
February
Oh, okay, great.
7th.
It's exciting. Okay. Nothing else? All right, well, we're a little ahead of schedule, but I'm going to move forward with public input. Is there anyone in the public who would like to? Okay, let me just make a couple of statements. We are happy to accept public input at this point, at this portion of our meeting. We ask that you state your name and your address for the public. We ask that you stay on a topic that is related to an agenda item that's already in the agenda. And we ask that you keep it to 2 minutes. And of course, we expect respectfulness. That was probably not a word, but I made one up.
I'm Sue Connolly. I live at 59 Dupont Gold Road in Brookline, New Hampshire. And I just came today to speak to that you have here public input related to school and class sizes. In particular, I just wanted to address the teachers in our school. We've had teachers who are out because of quarantine and our class sizes have been monitored. I just want to make sure that people are very aware of the extra efforts that are going in. And me, as I've been a taxpayer for over 30 years, a teacher for almost 30 years, next year's 30 for me, and a mom of graduate from HB. And I've had many of your children in my classes. I just want to say thank you to the teachers in our school district and at the middle school and the high school who are going above and beyond. I wanted that to be a public announcement because they're working extra hours just like everybody in the community dealing with the pandemic. So I had to come and just make that out there in the public and just say the people who are at home doing remote, thank you for that. And those people who are subbing, Gina, you've been in the building, I know, and Beth, thank you for the extra effort and time. It's really appreciated in our community.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much. Thank you. We generally don't comment on public comment, but thank you for sharing that. Okay. So at that, is there any other public comment? Seeing none. I will move on and close public comment at this point and ask that we move on to the principal's report. I see one principal here. I think he's going to be reporting on multiple reports. Is that pretty much it?
That is correct.
And also our athletic update.
Correct. So
Thank
we'll
you,
go
Rick.
middle school, high school, athletics update, and with
And
athletics.
Just for note, and we can probably add this to the packet somehow, that the principal's report was inadvertently left out of the packet. So we have it in front of us.
Great. So I'll start with middle school, as I mentioned. Mr. Grisone asked me to pass along his comments regarding his master schedule. He felt they satisfied their goal of maintaining their cap of 25 students in all courses, being at or below 20 at or below 20 students in class, in-person learners in all classes, and noted that this particularly small 7th grade class contributed to some of the smaller section sizes, particularly in math, which includes additional remedial and advanced sections. They were pleased that the common planning time was maintained for all teachers, and common skills time for students and core teachers was achieved, as was the goal from the Instructional Leadership Committee. And a special congratulations to Lynn Willett, who won the Art Teacher of the Year and will represent New Hampshire at the National Art Education Association Conference in March. And also noting that they delivered a successful PSAT 8-9 here at the middle school, and the results will typically sent out in February, and that there's more testing on the horizon with the SAS testing that's going to be taking place next week for both in-person and remote students. So that's all we have for his particular report. Are we doing class size discussions separately, or just?
Why don't you just do your whole thing and then
Okay,
we'll,
we'll go back and
because
forth.
we're obviously not going to discuss with you Tim's class sizes, so.
So before I begin my report, I just wanted to address the email that was received to school board members and myself and Superintendent Corey regarding student concerns specific to some of the racial inequality initiatives and diversity initiatives that have been discussed at these meetings. Obviously, the email was directed to everyone, and I felt that necessary just to make a few comments before I dive into my board report. Wanted to make folks aware that we went through that email thoroughly. You could basically break that email into several categories. Things, and obviously I can't dive into details, but I can tell you there are things on there that have been investigated and had a finding. There are things on there that were investigated and had no finding. And there were things on there that weren't attributed solely to the middle school or the high school, so I wouldn't be able to speak to those. And the majority of those things, as is often the case with issues like that, were not reported, or we were not aware of them, which is unfortunate. Some things in terms of, I think context is everything, just kind of as a reminder. It's not singular to Hollis Brookline as a community. I've never been in a school that doesn't face these issues. They're serious issues. They occur everywhere. I'm proud of our attempts or our ability and our record of investigating everything that's been brought to us thoroughly and fairly. But those investigations often require cooperation, and sometimes that can be tough to come by. And it's also something we've never hidden from either. I mean, I've sent out public correspondence to the community when things have occurred, vandalism and everything else. So that's been very public, as it should be, because everybody should be aware when those things occur. I think it's also important to remember things that we've already done as a community. We've offered Challenge Day, which some members of the board here have experienced that firsthand, which is a very immersive social emotional learning experience that's absolutely relevant, now so even more than ever. We've had a number of student events, certainly in my time as principal, as well as staff events over the year, and I just highlighted a few things that just off the top of my head. Field days were specially themed field days around what was called Spread the Word to End the Word for students who had disabilities, and ending the use of certain words. There's been campaigns for things like that. We've had a variety of speakers regarding mental health over the years that come in and have addressed the whole student body. Chris Herron was obviously a speaker on substance abuse, but also tapped into mental health. We're very proud of our GSA club, who's a great advocate for the students in our community, and there are many things that are tied into our curriculum as well through, tends to be more in the humanities, but it's not always exclusive to that. But nonetheless, some of those comments in that email certainly are going to warrant further investigation. I think the spirit of what was being shared by the students was more that there's things that need to be acknowledged and more needs to be done, not certainly that you need to go investigate everything line item. And we applaud their efforts. And I reached out to them again, and we have a meeting set up for next week to meet with the students who sent the letter to us. The goal is really to have a dialogue and open communication with them. I think with a topic such as this, you want to create safe space and kind of identify the trusted adults that they can go to and create that trust. We also have the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee at the SAU level, which I'm sure we'll get a lot of direction from as that continues to form and they meet. And it's another plug for advisory at the high school. I mean, that's a key vehicle, will become a key vehicle and for us to be able to have conversations and address issues in a more personal way rather than an assembly format, which of course now due to COVID is completely impossible. But going forward, I think that is going to be an important way to address it. But as all schools are, it's a work in progress, and we'll continue to do and meet those needs to the best of our ability and beyond. So in my report, I'm just going to go over, because there's a whole bunch of things I know to talk about. I'm just going to hit some highlights in the high school report. We want to congratulate Mrs. Plummer. We're proud to announce that Stacy Plummer has been selected for the University of Chicago's Outstanding Educator Award. The distinguished award has existed for more than 3 decades. Students accepted in the University of Chicago class of 2024 were asked to nominate an educator whose guidance has helped them along their path towards intellectual growth. Responses were received from thousands of students in recognition of educators who've positively impacted their lives. And it's great, I think any teacher would say the best award is being nominated by a student. That's a pretty big deal, so we're proud of her for that. Before we get into what I will be the lengthier items in my report, we talked a little bit about Halloween before the meeting started. Student council really wants to do something because it's great to be back in school, but we're also looking forward to creating some sort of sense of normalcy. And I suggested they look at doing some sort of spirit week, because we're not going to probably be able to do a spirit week in the traditional sense with a full rally inside of a gym. So I thought their idea was to kind of come up with like little pieces of spirit weeks throughout the year. So we're looking forward to that, and that will be kind of starting next week as an activity for students to show school spirit and have something fun and engaging to do outside of academics, which is really, really important. The school profile, you have a hard copy of that. We're obviously very proud of it every year. The college acceptances in that particular group were exceptional. When you look at some of the places our students went, the SAT numbers are not, we did not have the SAT last year, so those students literally just took that exam. So the SAT numbers are the same numbers as they were last year. So those are for the class of 2020 instead of the 2021, but everything else should be updated, and we like those SAT numbers anyway, so happy to have them on the profile 2 years in a row. It's not a bad thing. But again, it's another example at the end of the pipeline. It's kind of a culminating effort, K through 12. You see how well we do as a district, and that I would put that profile next to any school in the state, and it speaks for itself. So I'm happy to take any questions you might have on that before we dive into master schedule. But you just go through it all?
No, actually, we can take a break and
Okay.
talk a little bit about what you just mentioned and
Yep.
talked about, and what Tim's report was, and then we'll move on to class
Okay.
sizes. Does anyone have any comments for Rick on what we've seen so far?
Congratulations to Ms. Soulette and Mrs. Plummer. Amazing.
Yeah, I wrote that down. I was going to say the same thing, but also banking, in response to kind of public input, thank you to all the staff for making this year happen. And obviously, we have a couple members that have some special congratulations. I also wanted to say that the students who sent that email, it was a very brave thing for them to do, as you commented to them. And, I want them to know that we all read it and took it seriously, and appreciate that you're kind of, working with them on this. Is there anyone else? Tim's report, anything? All right, so let's move on to class sizes at the high school, I think is going to be next, or do you want to just do the athletic report first, and then we'll do class sizes?
It's up to you. I can go either way.
I think the class sizes is going to be the biggest conversation piece, so let's just talk about the athletic piece, and then we'll move on to that.
Dive into it. So in terms of the athletics report, just hitting on some highlights in Brian's report, which you have. We've had a great seasons throughout. It's been great to have kids participating in sports and being able to do so safely, which is huge. The compliance, and it's in my board report, but Brian mentions it in his as well, with the protocols and procedures. Kids have done a really good job. I mean, there's always, the room for reminders and those types of things, but to have 1,000 people or 950 people or 800 and some kids, to see them doing the right thing, or if they need a reminder, it's pretty quick. That's a really special thing, and those are the things that are going to keep us going for as long, hopefully throughout the rest of the year. So we're pleased with that, and it applies to athletics. We have a undefeated girls volleyball and boys soccer team currently. They're still undefeated. We are very proud of our golf team, which is won a state championship, the first time in the history of the program. So congratulations to those folks as led by their seniors. In terms of the middle school athletics update, they've been doing intramurals, and the numbers there that were particularly impressive are the 142 athletes across 5 separate teams, which is roughly 1/3 of the middle school participating in an intramural program. And that's pretty impressive across the board, and it's great for kids. They're actively exercising and getting out there and working out. And the girls volleyball team, another highlight, was able to continue their Dig Pink game and to raise money virtually for breast cancer research. Another highlight I wanted to bring to your awareness is there's the NHIA proposal to push the start of the winter season back to January. There's still discussion about which sports will and won't run. I think being indoors this time is the big shift. Being able to be outdoors was really helpful, especially since it barely rained in the fall. So that's going to be a big focus on increasing those protocols to make sure we're able to have indoor practices and continuing to have a winter season like we're able to do in the fall. So they're looking to push the season back to January 17th, allowing schools to run their own skills and drill sessions beginning in December. And, again, we'll be looking at our protocols and procedures and making them more focused on indoor guidelines as we look for how to best accommodate the winter sports. So Brian and Ron have done a tremendous job for both the middle school and the high school, and really, in every sense of the word, have been the leaders in the state in terms of offering sports programs, and people kind of look to us because they have some of the best ideas. And so our kudos to both of them for running good programs and keeping our kids involved. And we have a few openings as well, as you'll notice in the report.
Great, thank you. Any comments on athletics? Just thanks for doing it. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great. I do think it's really interesting, that participation number for the middle school with intramurals, and maybe there's some lessons learned there, or lessons that can be learned from that, so, in the future.
So moving on to the master schedule at the high school. This is our annual review of class sizes. I think in terms of just overall highlights, before we get into specifics or individual questions, we're definitely able to have some lower class sizes, which I know has been a push for a while. The small freshman class obviously makes that more of a reality. I think as a reminder that we're at about 817 the last time I checked and change, thereabout, give or take, in terms of total in-person and remote students, which is down about 40 students, I believe, from last year. So that's a significant amount, and an expected amount, though, given that this freshman class is smaller. It's resulted in some lower teacher workloads. So you'll see on there, undoubtedly, there's some smaller sections than we've probably had in the past. But when you look at the total teacher workload, you really would want to be, I would say, in the 90s or 100s. And there's been many years we've been in the 115s and 120s for individual teacher workload, which I think is quite honestly too much. But those teachers have always done a good job with that. And I would say a lot more of them are in the kind of low 100s, low 90s range with this current schedule. The schedule also allows us to continue offering a comprehensive list of offerings for our students. Within that, just putting it, and I know that you guys have had a chance to review it, some of our sections with lower numbers would be social studies. There might be some improvements that we could look at going forward for next year's program of studies around Latin. Certainly some lower numbers in English, which is a good thing because we've worked for a while to get down the writing numbers in particular. And if you look at our profile, I mean, that SAT score we've never had. Our SAT scores in writing and reading are going up every year, and they continue to go up every year. And so we're obviously want to continue that. And just a reminder too, in talking with Principal Grisone, there's going to be another smaller 7th grade class coming in, so we're going to have, I think there's going to be kind of a dip in enrollment for the high school. And again, I'm speaking to some of the lower class sizes that we have. And some of these classes too, With some of the lower sections, we've addressed, particularly in the visual and performing arts, it won't play out. It's going to take a couple years to play out. In the past, there have been a lot of kind of what I'll call blocks to accessing some of them, and we've been removing those blocks like Fundamentals of Art, which has opened up the art offerings, and we've also semesterized some of the theater courses so that kids have other opportunities to access them. So I think as kids realize that that's there and available, those numbers will start to go up. And I'm happy to, I mean, there's a lot that a lot of areas to focus on here, so I'm happy to answer any questions folks have.
Just one question, Rick?
Sure.
I might have more, but, so when you have students in the column, that's the total number of students assigned to that class, and then the remote is, the remote is the number.
Yes.
So the
remote
total
is-
number isn't, so the first one, Excel Bio, the total number isn't 16 plus 3 equals 19. It's
Correct.
16 students are assigned to that Excel
3 of
Bio.
which are remote.
And 3, because I think Tim did it a little differently. I
He
just
did
wanted
do
to
it
make sure,
differently.
because
Yeah.
when I first looked at this, I thought we had numbers that were really high in certain, like, because I was adding them, but
Right.
it didn't need to. So, okay, great. I'm sure I'll have some other questions as the conversation goes. Are there any questions from anyone? Anyone? Tom?
There's over 50 classes or listed at 10 or fewer, which is higher than I'm used to seeing. Is there something in flux where that's likely to change? Is it due to the fact that many of these are multiple classes that are combined? Can you help me understand
Yep.
why we have this big jump in small classes?
So in addition to less students overall, you do have classes in there that are combined. Some of them I didn't always note which ones, like some of your art club, some of our art classes are combined, like a drawing 1 or a drawing 2, or the acting courses. Some of those, and then in addition to the ones that are combined, so you would have to add both of those numbers together, there are a number of, we've increased our offerings in special ed over the years. We don't usually, I inadvertently put a few in there, but there are some other ones that we normally put in there, like some of the math offerings, and those are traditionally special ed or what we'll call foundation offerings that aren't necessarily special ed. We have a number of courses there that are in the lower range, and that's why they're there, because they're addressing kids with different, abilities where they might need extra support.
Is much of it schedule driven? That you had to make small sections to let them have their classes?
There is an element of being able to offer certain classes. Sometimes we had to split classes, otherwise kids would not have access to them. And that can happen in some of the history classes as well as some of the foreign language classes as well. But I do agree these are some lower numbers than we've had in the past.
Think we're going to be able to move away from this or move to alternate year offerings and things like that we've discussed in the past?
I think with the conversation where that is going to be very relevant will be around French, and possibly we've kind of already built in the ability to share a French position with the middle school. I think that's something that we're going to have to look at. I think that when we look at Latin in terms of, I would like to see us open that up to beginning freshman year. We just traditionally haven't done it, but I'm not really sure the reasons why we haven't done it are really valid anymore, so maybe we need to look at that. Then we'll probably then take away from some of the other language courses too.
I think there's going to be this is going to draw a lot of attention come budget and contract time, because we have been experiencing declining enrollment. We see that it looks like it's going to be picking up.
Yep.
But the trend has been down, and the number of small classes are going up. And I know that's been a very vocal concern for a portion of our community, and I'm hoping that we can do something to perhaps mitigate that.
So then, yeah, I mean, within that too, you do have, like I said, this smaller 7th grade class, so I think it's something you can expect to see probably for the next 4 years. I would not recommend reducing FTEs because you're just going to have to hire those people back and you want to keep people, but I certainly understand the argument.
Are you done?
Thank you.
When you said there's 40 less students, this year in the enrollment drop. Did you see that because the freshman class was so small that that's the total number? Or did you see a little bit of an exodus because of COVID to homeschooling and private schools or any of that? Like, did you notice that kind of trend, or would you just say that's anecdotal?
I'm going to say that's mostly the freshmen
Okay.
dropping.
Okay.
Because
The number, that cohort's just smaller.
It's a much smaller cohort.
But then the 8th grade cohort's on the larger side, right?
On the larger side, and the
On the
7th grade
seventh grade.
is going to be smaller. And I feel like we've discussed in the past, years past, looking at the NASDAQ numbers, there was a kind of an anticipated
Yeah,
dip.
just to add a little bit more, so the current 9th grade class was running about 30 fewer students than any other class. And then there are certainly more homeschool students all over the place, but definitely, I want to say 10 or 12. I just looked at the report today, this year. So that kind of makes up your group. We still have families registering every day, maybe not at the high school, but across the SAU. People are definitely moving here, but yes, 7th grade is a little bit smaller. Right now, 8th grade is higher. The 7th grade class isn't as small as the 9th grade class. I think in a couple years we'll see what happens with the economy. But I mean, I think it's hard to make a decision now that would have a long-term impact when you know what's coming in just a couple years.
I guess the reason I asked the question is, to Tom's point, we do see some smaller numbers, but if we had sort of a group of students that moved out, you plan in May and you see numbers, and then it's hard to know to move things around if the numbers look okay in May, and that's why we want to see this report in May and in October so that we can see like, oh, we planned this, but then this is the reality. We might have students that dropped or students who moved on. Okay, are these our student council reps?
They are.
Great. Can you introduce them again?
Yes.
for us? Thank you.
So we have with this, I think you guys are going to be here for both of them. And actually, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Hi, I'm Annie. I'm a senior.
Oh, we met before. Thank
Yep.
you for
Yeah.
coming, Annie.
Hi, I'm Jess. I'm also a senior.
Jess? Great. Welcome. Great. So,
Can I also just add one piece?
Sure.
So as part of the budget, as Rick alluded to, we added .2 French. So right now, we're able to offer 6 sections of French at the middle school, which we've never been able to do. So that gives you 3 sections in 7th and 3 sections in 8th. That essentially gets rid of the every other year dip for your AP French, but it takes 4 years to get there because it's the 7th and 8th graders that we're talking about. So.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, Cindy, go ahead.
Tom, I know that you're the numbers guy, and I wasn't sure what you ran that statistic on, but I did notice that a lot of the lower numbers are semester 2 classes, which aren't actuals yet. So I think that may, I know
They
being
could
in the
fill.
building for ad drop, that's a crazy time. So some of those lower numbers for the semester 2 may not end up being where they are.
So I'm actually, thanks for bringing up the ad drop piece. One of the other areas, and it's definitely affected the schedule. Doing the schedule in COVID remotely, it's nice that you can do it all on a computer and you think it's just going to be the same result. It's not the same as being in the building and running numbers. And then we always had, the piece that was missing from this is we always had a chance for students to come down, and then we could make adjustments then before we got into the year of, you know what, maybe we don't need to run that section. And we could do that before the year started. This year it was very difficult because we really didn't have the access we would want to students and families,
Right,
and that
so-
made it difficult.
So if you see a smaller section and you're in the building, you might be able to kind of talk to those students and see whether or not this is a class
Right.
they really want to. Could they switch into this class? Could they switch into that class? But you can't have those conversations when you're at home remotely.
Isolated.
Or you could, but it was a lot of work. And there was a lot going on. It wasn't.
There's a lot going on, but
There's a little bit going on.
I'm also not gonna blame it completely on COVID either.
Right.
It had an impact, but it's not the impact.
And no, the list I just did a resort based on total students, and
Tom, can
That's
you
what I
talk
thought.
just a little bit louder? I'm having trouble hearing you. I'm sorry.
I just I sorted based on the student column, and chemistry period 1 which is a year-long course, has 3 students. Life science 3, AP art and design has 4, digital photography is the second semester, that has 4. So it's a mix, but it's more than I'm used to seeing in recent years. And
Just that chemistry, because that caught my eye too. If you sort it, pull it out, set chemistry essentials. So it was a foundational class. We usually, the other ones are
it
accurate.
doesn't say that on the list.
It
I know
says
it did.
chemistry essentials right there, yeah.
If you spread it out, because
Oh,
yeah, you have to open up the.
Okay.
Yeah, I caught my eye too. I was going through. I'm like, that's gonna come
It's
up.
right there, yeah.
okay. I'm
Yeah, I
working on a
got
different
you.
list.
Yeah.
But the other question I have is, how does the ratio of remote to total impact how the class goes? I'm assuming that any class here, regardless of how that distribution is a single teacher, is that correct?
That is correct.
Are we seeing anything that means that we have to adjust policy regarding class size to maintain effectiveness in a split situation like we have?
I haven't seen that play out in this schedule. It's so hard because it's teacher specific. I'm thinking of our Spanish class. Senora Robbins has like 28 kids in that class. There's about 7 that are remote, thankfully, because we would never be able to fit them all in the same room. So that's actually kind of it worked out. Would not want a class that high when I know the school board, we've talked about that. In terms of how does it play out? It's hard, especially at the beginning of the year. It's very difficult for teachers to teach on Zoom and have live students in front of them. I think they've adapted very well over even the short period. I would happily ask our student reps what their experience is, because they're in the classroom with some of their student classes. I'm sure have a lot more remote students than others. But I don't think any teacher would say it's definitely a challenge. So kind of answering the first part of your question, it's
I guess.
Or not.
The overarching answer I'm getting is no, we don't need to make changes.
correct. I don't see that based on this year right now, no.
Okay, great. Any other questions or comments? Students? Okay. All right. Thank you, Rick, for producing that and putting that together for us.
Thank you.
And just as far as the agenda goes, is athletic protocols a separate item, or is that part of what was?
That was part of the athletic report. I don't know why it says protocols, but it was the athletic. We don't have further conversation about athletic
I
protocols that
don't
we have
think
to
so.
change,
I
right?
just assumed
Okay.
that was meant to,
It was-
well, what are we doing for the winter and that
Right,
type of thing,
okay.
and how have things been going?
Okay, great. All right. There's no other questions on that? Thank you so much. That's a big chunk of our meeting. Budget committee update. Cindy, do you have something for us a little bit, or?
Not really. They didn't set guidance. They're still discussing that.
Okay.
And they did ask that the contract be completed by January 28th, or they would not consider it to vote on it.
Okay.
Those were the two, I think, main highlights.
Okay, anything else from budget? That one, no?
Just to let the board know, we had completed what we call our first round. That came in about 4.85% increase, and that is just basically Tim and Rick and Brian come over and tell me everything that they desire. And then we held a budget meeting last week, I think it was, and we went from about 4.85 to about a little over 3.2, somewhere in that range. So that will be the first one that will be going to the budget committee tomorrow night. We will ask them to talk a little bit about the maintenance trust versus the bond and looking at those type of things, as well as the proposed potential change to the athletic trust to becoming more of a revolving account instead of an annual warrant item. There'll be further discussions, I'm sure, around the upcoming contracts, and hopefully at that point they'll start to be moving us towards some form of guidance. One of the pieces that Kelly will discuss with the members of the budget committee is just with both New Hampshire retirement going up and GMR for insurance going up, are those items potential relief from guidance items, because those are kind of contractually based and not controlled, so there'll be a discussion about that as well. But we're off and running with the budget process.
Thank you. Yes, Tom?
2 things. From the from the Budget Committee's vote of not to consider, is it that, do you think it's that they won't take a vote, or that they'll vote against it?
I don't think they'll take a vote.
Okay. And
So-
Andy,
So they wouldn't have a recommendation on the
Okay,
warrant
okay.
articles. I don't think they'll take a vote.
I have some concerns about too much discussion about contract in the Budget Committee, since it's a public discussion. So and from past guidance that we've gotten from legal, there's no real grounds for the Budget Committee going to non-public. So therefore, I'd ask that there be every effort to minimize the depth of discussion of contract negotiations that might, I mean, they're free to talk about it, but as anyone representing the board, we have to
Right.
refrain from any conversation.
I will send an email to the chair, letting her know of your concern.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. At this point, we're at discussion. We have the FY 2020 revenue and expense report in our packet. If you could- Oh, wait, hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. I just want to go back a little bit. Do we have a report from student council? Or are you guys here to listen today?
We do have a small report. We're basically just getting started on a lot of things, but,
I'm sorry, I just need to go back.
yeah. So, basically, right now, we're just starting to think about, what policies we want to work on. So we just recently split into subcommittees to see, like, to sort of sort out each idea that we have and see if it's applicable. And so basically what we came up with for possible policies are, just sort of going over what snow day procedures would be in place, once that becomes a problem. A lot of students have reported that they like the current bell schedule, that, with the long blocks and everything, so see if we could, incorporate that moving forward, even after COVID is not an issue anymore. A lot of students liked remote Fridays, so we were gonna look into seeing if we could do something with that. And then, we also noticed that in the lunchroom in the high school, social distancing has sort of been, a small issue. I wouldn't say that it's something terrible, but we're just looking in to see if there's any options that we can make it even better there.
Great. Great.
And then for Halloween plans, that's kind of in the activities section. Obviously, we can't be doing with big assemblies this year, so the juniors told us that they're just going to stick with doing like a week of dress-up days to celebrate that.
Great, thank you. So in general, go ahead, Tom, did you?
I was just wondering, I'm getting a little ahead of things, but I'm not sure, are you, whether you're staying for the entire meeting? I hope for your sake you don't have to. But the policy that we're gonna be discussing on class rank, and there's a date of when it was potentially going to be implemented. And the class on the bubble was the junior class. Well,
The cut is after the junior class. After the junior class.
After the junior class.
After. So it would be the sophomores.
My question was whether or not there is any interest in having the students who are directly affected weigh in on, specifically the junior class, on whether or not they would have a preference.
Are you saying to like expedite it, to start, like if that was, if you're going in that direction?
If the students wanted to implement it with their graduating year, would there be support from the administration in accommodating such a request?
If there was a large group of students that, like, say, I think what you're saying is if the junior class wanted to do it,
Yeah.
I think we'd be completely open to that. I don't think that's gonna be the case, though.
I'm
But if
just-
it was,
I'm just
absolutely.
wondering if the student council is looking at things that might be timely. Now's the time, if we want to get that input while we're still in the multiple reading stages of it.
Yeah, that
This would be the time to get that input.
It's a really good point that we would like the student council reps to take back to student council, that this policy is in its first reading. with the school board, and that the current packet, the current policy recommendation from the committee is to start with the current sophomores, to be no longer announcing the top 10, and that was sent home to parents as well. But it would be great if, as representatives, you could make sure that the student council is aware, and that if there are students out there who would like to make comment, that they can do so at a public input, and have public input. And certainly they can reach out to their principal and let him know, but we would be happy to hear from them.
And,
So.
and what's driving it is the student input we had during the committee. There was, depending on who's being asked, there was some very strong sentiments expressed, and I'd like to capture that.
Sure. That's a good point, thank you, Tom. So, ladies, just so you know, generally, we ask that you make a report as part of the principal's report, and then you do not have to stay for the entire meeting. You are welcome to, and we appreciate your input, so it's not an issue, but you do not have to. And I will often forget to let you know that, so you can go if you want to.
Okay, thank you.
Krista usually reminds me. So.
Well, and also, just, please know you can speak on anything we're talking about.
Right.
Don't feel like you have to wait to be,
Invited.
Acknowledged and say, you're part of the board, so just jump in and speak when you guys want to speak, because we like to hear from you guys.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Great, now where were we? Discussion, revenue and expense report.
Yes, I'd like to thank Linda and Kelly for their efforts on this. As the board knows, we're just trying to limit the number of administrators attending our meetings. So in your packet, you have the year-end summary dated 6/30/2020. And the budget and year-to-date expenses left us with $1,678,922. That was based on the decisions we made during COVID to limit transportation and a host of other things. There was what we call carryover expense. That means POs that were encumbered and expected to be paid. In this case, the balance came in less than we had for the POs. So that allowed us to add another $11,083, so that there was $1,690,005. On the revenue side, once everything was said and done and we received all our revenues that had come in, we were $16,083 above our revenue projections. So that made obviously a drastic difference between the actual and the original MS-27 that we filed. Originally, when we were projecting all this many, many months ago, we were looking at $734,000 as the unreserved fund balance. That unreserved fund balance was actually $1,706,088. From that, we deduct the approved warrant articles, so the athletic trust, the maintenance trust, the special ed trust, and the contingency fund. And then we have the retained fund balance, which you may recall, traditionally we have kept that around $142,000. This year we increased that by vote to $189,000. So that means we will be returning $1,125,088 to the taxpayers to offset. We had originally projected $200,000. We had told the board probably a couple months back, we thought that would be a minimum of $900,000. Obviously, that has gone up. As you know, Kelly is very conservative in her projections, so we're very pleased with that and excited to send that money back. We will be also sending back about $250,000 in Hollis and $450,000 in Brookline to offset taxes. In terms of just a couple of the driving pieces, one of the things that did go over budget was some site improvements at the high school. Probably the most expensive piece there was the day tanks, which are our water tanks. We had discovered probably about 18 months ago that there was a significant issue with one of the tanks. So that was rectified and fixed. So that has been taken care of, and we don't anticipate anything else going wrong with that tank, knock on wood. Most of the other areas were all under budget based, again, on COVID. I'll also let the board know that Bob and Amy have done a terrific job We have basically finished up approximately 100 meetings across the SAU for special ed, looking at any obligations we may have because of services, which would require compensatory services. We're not seeing a large amount. As many of you know, but I don't know how many community members are aware, basically by the end of March last year, we had our neediest learners back in the building. And we're delivering services right through the whole time. So those students that required extensive and services, those were delivered. So again, I can't commend Bob and Amy enough for their efforts, along with Lauren and Jen at the middle school, because again, coordinating all the meetings that had to take place and meeting with all the families and sorting through everything is done and complete. Kind of the last phase of that, as Rick talked a little bit about, we're starting SAS at the middle school. We just took the PSATs at the high school. Those are your state tests. And we're doing that at the elementary level. And that will give us what I'll call some concrete data points to kind of look at what was the actual progress for students while we were out during the pandemic. And I'd be happy to take any questions regarding the expense and revenue report.
Tom?
Do the areas of exceptional savings, would you categorize them as windfall type, or are they systemic in that they put us on a different track for this year's budgeting?
I would call them windfall because a lot of it was unfilled positions or people who decided that they would didn't want to work during the pandemic. So when we look at our regular education, a savings of $260,000, that's an interim savings because of people being out and not filling positions during the pandemic. Same with some special ed because we required fewer out-of-district services, so we weren't necessarily expending those costs or those transportation costs, which are significant, because when we moved students back to our local schools, many of them had been out of district. Instead of being transported almost an hour away for a cost of $100,000, it was local transportation coming to Hollis Brookline High School because we moved everybody into the high school, so we'd have one environment that we were able to clean and able to maintain and deliver the services. So I would say they're windfalls. I think when I look at Rick's numbers for the class sizes, you know, it's always tough to go into a budget. So what we've done in some of our other districts is if we get a retirement, we may decide not to fill the retirement. So that money would eventually go back to the taxpayers, but it's not out of the budget to find out if to me, if something's 2 years in a row, then you definitely don't need it. But sitting here now trying to plan for what enrollment will be next spring is going to be very difficult. And it's not like the elementary school where it's basically 20 to 25 children means that you can reduce a teacher. Because high school is based on signups, which from year to year, they're not always a guarantee of what they're going to choose.
So for instance, the special ed savings, when you brought kids back into the school, you had to take the special ed services back out of the building, and the transportation costs are now being incurred again, things like that?
Correct. Most of our students who were out of district placed, we have a number of students who go to school in Massachusetts who, because of the pandemic, closed.
Mm-hmm.
So those students came home to the families and they needed services. So Bob and Amy coordinated van transportation using our own vans. So there was really no cost except for our drivers who were already on staff. And then those services were delivered in the high school. Now, those services were not identical to what they would have received in their residential placement or their daily placement, but they allowed us to maintain a continuity of education for the student.
But for the current year and projecting for the future year where we're having students in school for regular ed, that option no longer exists, nor is the need there. So they have the external services are now available again. We're transporting again. I just want to make it clear that when people see this huge number, they're going to say, are you going to have a huge number come
Or why can't you
June
do this every
next
year?
year?
Right.
And why aren't we continuing to do what we did so wonderfully in the year we just completed.
Right.
I do also, it's hard to remember this far back, but September of 2019, we did have a couple of out-of-district placement students move out of the community. So you can't plan on, families moving. So there's just a lot that,
Yeah,
when you're
no,
building a
I-
budget 18 months in advance, you can't plan on, and you can't plan for the future to do so well,
Yeah,
to encourage
I-
families to move out.
Yeah, I'm not challenging it so much
Yeah.
as I want the backstory clearly understood.
Sure.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a good point. Yep. Definitely. Any other questions? Did you get your answer? Good?
Mhm.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
And you're good?
Yeah.
Are you-
Andy should be an engineer based on how he explains things.
Yeah.
The FY '22 budget, I kind of already covered that under the budget discussion. I kind of went a little too quick there. So with the board's permission, I'll jump down to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Sure.
Just to let the board know, we had our first meeting as a committee 2 weeks ago on Thursday. It went very, very well. We did introductions, we did organization, and kind of talked about our framework. We are meeting again tomorrow night. Tomorrow night we are working on kind of a vision for our committee, and along with that vision, what are the goals and objectives. And then our goal in November is to start giving regular presentations at the board. So we'll have a committee member. We have committee members from each town, each district, so we're going to ask committee members to come and kind of provide their input, so it's just not me, and the community gets an understanding. It's a very diverse committee. We're really excited about it. We did kind of a sharing of stories, why we were all interested in the committee, and it was very, very powerful. Because a lot of times these are folks who I know because their children are in our schools, or maybe some of you will know them as neighbors, but yet we don't know their story of what brings them to education and wanting to serve on a diversity, equity, and inclusion. I thought it was timely because then we received the email from our students, which is one of the reasons I wanted to move forward, because some of the students had reached out and talked to Rick and I separately, and we kind of said to them, well, we need your input. We need to know where you want to go as well, because it's your committee. So we will have components where we look to get teacher input, where we look to get community input through forums and things. Right now, we're just balancing. We believe there's enough on our teachers' plates that we can do the bulk of the work, and kind of when we need to go out to them, it's more getting concrete data and specific examples. We also have a number of things that either administrators or teachers have started to put forward on their own, knowing where the community wants to take us. So Mr. Guzon at the middle school, his PTA is sponsoring, I believe it's a monthly poster that focuses in on different topics regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'd like to thank the PTA for stepping forward on that. Both Gina and I are doing some readings from some different authors to kind of update us. As you know, I've talked about it, we are relying heavily on Choose Love, which we already have incorporated in the CASEL program. So we're not starting from scratch. And I'm very excited. I find it invigorating because right now, during our traditional school day, we pretty much focus on one or two things only. So this was a nice way to start talking about kids again and talking about community goals and where we wanted to head. So I do look forward to bringing you some information in November. We will be looking at the resolution that was put forth by the communities and kind of reviewing that from a committee point of view and bringing that back to the boards for approval. And I'll take any questions on that.
I have one, but does anyone have any questions? So, I think did you say you're gonna report back to the board, and then are you leaving opportunities for public forums or public, like a public forum type event? Did you say that?
No, it's our intent to, as we move forward, whether it's with a revised resolution, the same resolution, wherever it ends up, or things that we're looking at doing, to hold public forums. Now, they might be done virtually via Zoom.
Right.
Or they might be done in the high school auditorium with limited seating available just based on spacing and COVID guidelines. But we definitely want input from the community, and I've been very pleased because the committee is what I would say diverse, with members from each community, and as a result, we're getting feedback from people and citizens. There were 4 people that showed up last month in Brookline during public input, 3 which are not on our committee, that gave some wonderful insight from this perspective of not only being parents, but one giving us their views of being somebody who grew up in our communities and now has their children in our community. So that was a very powerful statement, and one that really impacted the people that were in attendance that night.
Is curriculum and support materials a part of the discussion?
The procedure will be that the first thing we'll do is working through administration and teachers is get everything that is currently in place, because we're already using novels and lessons and things like that that promote a lot of what I talked about with those courageous conversations. And then once we gather what we're doing, we'll kind of turn that ball over to Gina in terms of the curriculum, instruction, and assessment component, and that's when we'll start to involve more faculty members in our discussion. So I think what is going to happen, Tom, it's going to be almost at times multiple trains of committees running at the same time, and then the advisory committee will be melding that all together and bringing it back. Because what I'd like to bring ultimately is a series of informational type of documents, and then a packet that kind of brings it all together, and that packet would be our strategic direction for the next several years.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so involving faculty as much as possible, clearly a goal would be a goal, but also involving students as much as possible. And some of those public forums, unfortunately we have COVID, but it would really be lovely to have some members of that advisory committee be able to sit down with our students, and not just our high school students, but our middle school students, and even some of our little ones, because the kids are going to have a take on this thing, and it's really important for us to really understand where they're coming from with all this, because we assume a lot, but they can enlighten us a lot. So,
Agreed.
and would encourage them to come and give us public input, although they're not 18, but we can have some sort of time for them. Okay. Next, anything else? Anyone else? Anybody? Okay, great. Let's move on to HB Elevates.
Okay.
And just for your information, the way it's in this packet is difficult to understand, so we need some help with that.
The HB Elevates organization met last month, and they continue to do some remarkable work, and there are a number of things in the pipeline. One of the things that they asked us about immediately was there something from a technology point of view that they could assist with related to the pandemic? So I reached out. Tom had asked me, because he was able to attend the last meeting and I was not, looking for a list of items. So I reached out to Rick and to Tim, and that's kind of the first document you see in your packets. It's the Hollis Brookline High School science lab tables, the wide-angle webcams, the acoustic wall panels, and the wireless overhead projector. And an iPad to use a smartboard wirelessly, iPencil for iPad. At the middle school, some slates, some wide-angle webcams, some Chromebook chargers, things of that nature, a student earbud. The next page was Rick was able to, and Tim was able to put some numbers to that. So you'll see that the physics lab, the tables are 30 to 40 years old. So they're looking at 12 of those for $754 for $9,048. They were looking to improve the remote school experience with 10 items at $49, which I believe are those.
They what, webcams?
Yes. So the numbers kind of correspond with the items. So the wall panels and things like that, the sound in the classroom would be $1,000 to get multiples of those. The one will come Wacom Pro Medium, one of those for $380 to improve the remote school experience at Harlow's Brookline Middle School. They had 5 items for that of $250. Improve the remote instruction capabilities. There was one at $120. Smart technology use again, and then the bulk packs of earbuds and the remote learning improvement again. So they came up with Rick and Tim, basically with $13,700 that was sent over to HB Elevates. HB Elevates came back and responded, and jump in if I state this wrong, Rick, but basically they were pledging $5,000 for everything but the science tables. They felt the science tables to them were more of a budgetary item, but did say that if it didn't make it through the budget, that we could come back to them and seek that. So they are willing to pledge $5,000 to that. We haven't had another meeting since then. We haven't finalized that donation, but Tom felt it was important, and I agreed with him, that we bring this forward so that all of you would know what was taking place, so that if in November we came back and were to ask to accept the donation, you'd know exactly what that was going to go to. And they have just been doing some great work, and I want to thank Rick and Tim for their efforts, because I think this organization is starting to really take on the goal that we were hoping to look at, the extras. For those in the community, they have helped us tremendously with the lights, with the bleachers. The turf field should wrap up in another couple months. I don't give any dates right now because everything takes much longer than I ever thought it would because of COVID, but it goes very well, and they have some other, I'll say, big ticket items potentially in the pipeline that you'll hear more about in the coming months. And anything I missed, Tom, or?
Well, just I'd like to add a little bit. One of the reasons that I wanted this particular list to come forward is just to make sure that these sort of a la carte items fit to our larger strategy, because I'm not sure that has necessarily been articulated, but I know in the past we've brought in chunks of technology only to find that it didn't support the software we're using or the curriculum that we tend to move on. So before spending, taking these thousands of dollars and buying these things, I want to make sure that they fit with the practices that are being employed and planned. This is nothing against what Rick and Tim did, but I suspect they went around and asked people what they need and relayed that. I don't know what level of filtering they were able to impart to this, so I figured this is as good a place as any to have that discussion as whether these are the items. Do we just want to get a donation? Is this just good to give us the HB Elevates a magnitude of how much we would like to have in a kitty to support STEM-related items, because the money that is earmarked for this was specifically donated to support STEM. The second thing I want to make people aware of is that they have asked a larger question, and that question is, what type of goals and target should they use for long-term fundraising campaign to support facility STEM, things of that nature? And towards that end, at a minimum, Andy and I and the building administrators are going to start to look at that. But the HB Elevates is interested, now that we've got this athletic field well underway and much of the heavy lifting has been done. There may still be donations that will do things like offset bond and that sort of thing, but there has been a community and school focus on perhaps overall space needs, and particularly supporting some of our newer technology needs. And we want to do it in the context of not supporting a club that, oh, by the way, will help the school, but what does the school need? So we're gonna be working towards defining that. And Andy, you can chime in however you want as far as what level of board involvement you anticipate in that effort.
I think there's two pieces. One of the things that we added probably 3 years ago now, Gina, Kelly, Rich Raymond, and Carol Tyler form our SAU Technology Committee, and basically everything goes through there. So if you want iPads in your budget, you may be able to get iPads. Like, I'll be honest, we have iPads in kindergarten because they are very effective with that age group. But by the time you go to the first grade and we want you to be on a Google account, we need you on a Chromebook. But that's all been governed by Gina's committee, and every piece of software is vetted through there so that we don't end up jumping into some free program that all of a sudden, a year later, is $3 a kid or $8 a kid. Rich does it from the IT side. He looks at it through the bandwidth side, all of those pieces. Carol Tyler looks at it through her expertise around the agreements. You know, when a child signs the agreement, when we sign as a school, what does that mean? And Kelly does it obviously from the budget end, and Gina does the curriculum instruction and assessment. So when we're going through our budgets, nothing gets through the budget that doesn't align with already the tech plan. The piece that we're looking for from the board is probably to start some discussions around either in our existing physical structure or increasing our existing physical structure, how do we enhance more of offerings for high-end classrooms? You know, we've done a pretty good job during remote learning, but we've also had some recent people step up that are now willing to give us the 70-inch monitors to be able to put in rooms so that math class projects a little better. The science department was able to purchase devices. They were about $84 a piece. We got 10 of them. But all of a sudden, everybody's whiteboard was in their hand, but it went directly to the computer, which is directly to Zoom. So it just changed the dynamics. And I've seen that not only from our science department, but you now see it when I go around to math classes, you know, at the middle school, and what's happening there, and the ability to be able to do a problem and walk through a problem. So there are a lot of things that I would say are not that expensive. And from the committee's, HB Elevate's point of view, they believe these are the type of things that parents would wholeheartedly support. So Tom and I will be bringing back some things in the coming months, and there'll be multiple components, some still academically focused, some still athletically focused, some with specific clubs or organizations in mind, because that's where either the community members' passion or loyalty lies.
Thank you very much for bringing that forward. That's
Yeah,
really good information. Appreciate it. Thank
I
you.
just want to focus on two things. The word enhance, that HB Elevate should be used to enhance the schools, that's the fundraising mechanism, but that the needs of the school are still the responsibility of the board and the taxpayer. So, but I definitely appreciate, like, a lot of these things would enhance their experience, but they're not necessarily needed. If something's needed, we should be putting it in the budget. So, but if there's something that could enhance an experience, then it's great that we can get a group that would fundraise for those things. Anyone else? Okay, so state infrastructure grant update?
Yeah, I just wanted to provide you an update of the infrastructure grants that were awarded probably, I'm gonna guess, a year ago, maybe a little longer, will expire this December. Kelly has been working hard with those. We focused in our districts primarily on upgrades of security cameras, so at the high school and that. And then about 3 or 4 weeks ago, there was a pool of money that became available because of districts had decided they weren't going to move forward with projects, maybe because of the pandemic or whatever was going on in their district. So we were offered another $32,000 to do the middle school upgrades for all our security cameras. because again of Kelly's planning and Rich's planning around all of this, we were able to say we could accept that and move forward with that, so that'll be done before the end of the year as well. And we're excited to get those done because we've significantly upgraded cameras, which provides us greater protection, and they are much more difficult to access than the cameras we had prior to this. So much more sophisticated, and we'll be adding a camera probably either this year or in next year's budget that will give us the ability to see the whole back turf field and softball fields. Rich was out there with vendors the other day, and we'll be able to locate that. And it may allow us to have the technology to do some streaming of games as well.
Do these grants require any matching funds from us?
This is the same ones that were the 80-20 split. So we had already allocated money for security at the middle school, so we're just parlaying the money that was already allocated to garner these other funds.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Great. All right. We are done with discussion, and we're ready for deliberations. The first deliberative item is to see what action the board will take regarding the committee appointments proposed by the co-op board chair. Last month, we spoke of this. Dawn pointed out through an email to us, to the vice chair and I, and that we have some policies. Policy BDE is one that states in part that standing and special committees and delegates shall be appointed by the chairperson of the board and approved by a vote of the majority of the board. And so there are multiple policies that she sent that reference that approval. So we felt like it would be just in keeping with, policy to have that as an actual motion and approval. So I am going to read the appointments one more time that I read into the minutes last time. I'm getting these directly from the minutes. Budget Committee is Cindy Van Conen. SAU 4 Governing Board Budgeting, so SAU 41 Governing Board Budget Committee is Beth Williams. Co-op Policy Committee is Holly Durla Babcock, Krista Whalen, and Beth Janine Williams. The Governing Board Policy Committee is Cindy Van Conen. Negotiations for HEA is Tom Solon, Liz Brown, and Cindy Van Conen. Negotiations for HESA is Holly Durla Babcock, Krista Whalen, and Kate Stoll. Facilities Committee is Holly and Cindy. Signing of the manifests is,
That one's missing Beth.
that should be Beth and Kate do the signing of the manifest, but Cindy is the alternate. We have an instructional best practices steering committee. That's Holly, Krista, and Tom. And then and there's subcommittees on that, but those are not appointed. And then HB Elevates is Tom Solon. So I need a motion to approve the appointments.
So moved.
It's moved by Tom, seconded by Beth. Is there any discussion on this? Anybody want to back out of anything? Okay, all in favor? 6-0-0. Okay, great. The next is to see what action the board will take regarding policy IHAMA, teaching about alcohol, drugs, and tobacco. We read this at first on the 12th of February. We would need this to be second reading, so I need a motion to accept the second reading of policy IHAMA, teaching about alcohol, drugs, and tobacco.
So moved.
It's moved by Tom, seconded by Beth, and we will move on to discussion of that, or, points taken. This was Tim's, right, so I'll do this. I need to have it in front of me, I'm sorry. No, I do, I have it. So basically, what the policy committee did to this is we added the legal references on this, and that was it. We had no other comments from the minutes, so we kept it the same and just added the legal references. Is that right?
And the word "and."
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. And
that's it.
we added the word "and." So instead of saying other drugs abuse there of the hazards, we have "and the hazards of using tobacco products." So we could actually amend this to second reading and adoption, or since let's just do second reading because we haven't looked at these policies for months, and that way people will have a chance to come back if there's a problem with them. So is there any comments on this? No? Okay, so approved for second reading. All in favor? 6-0. Okay, so that's that one. It'll get more complicated. Okay. Next one. All right, so I need a motion to accept the first reading of policy IKC, class rank as presented.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Tom, seconded by Beth. So we had a presentation on this at the last meeting, but we did not actually put the policy up for reading. So in your packet, you'll see that we've removed all language referencing how we would be announcing the top 10 and how we come to that, like how, and we took all that language out. And we've just basically changed the policy to beginning with the class of 2023. That was the decision that the policy committee made. Class rank, that should be lowercase r, will not be reported. The exception will be for class rank to be reported for the sole purpose for the Service Academies application process upon receipt of waiver and non-disclosure agreement from the student, parent, or guardian to release his or her rank. So that's pretty much what the whole policy would read. We did receive an email over the course of the last month regarding the Service Academies application process, and the policy committee felt like at the first reading, it should be presented with that exception still in place, but we do want input from the board. So that's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Any comments? Tom?
Well, as you I hope aren't surprised, I would like that beginning of class of 2023 to be explored to see whether class of 2022 would like to have the policy changed to affect them. I think the reason for waiting to the class of 2023 is to protect the interests of that class, and if their preference is to implement the change for their graduating class, I think the board should consider that input. At the discussions that took place, it was the benefit of the few versus the benefit of the many that influenced a lot of that. So I think we owe it to them. The other is, I had asked, and I don't know if anyone's had a chance to do it, but I've asked to see whether that requirement for the service academies is still valid. It's been a number of years since we had to address that formally, and I know that there have been a wave of changes regarding class rank on a national level. I'd like to test that, whether that's necessary, and whether we need to have it in the policy.
So, Beth, you look like you have a comment on the first piece.
On the first piece I did, but
Yeah,
just.
well, why don't we do the
yeah.
first piece, the deciding what year?
Sure, no, I agree wholeheartedly on getting, I'm getting feedback from that class, but I just want to specify, that starting point has been, the line that we don't know where to put it down. And so I would say, if the intention right now is that class of 23, we should be soliciting feedback from current students, not just that class. But I do appreciate what you're saying. If they're the ones that, I just think that we should not just be soliciting from the junior
One
class.
right.
If we're intending at the moment, the recommendation is to draw the line, the sophomores are impacted too. I just want to, I'm not suggesting just move this line back and forth. I'm not suggesting that, but I'm saying I really want to see more student feedback and families. And I know it's been put in the newsletter, and it's not a dig at you at all, Rick. I get so many, and it's hard to always read all of them. So having it just in there, we need to kind of keep reaching out. And the student council, I think, is a great idea. And I'm glad that, we'll kind of push for feedback, but I want more student feedback in general.
I hear what you're saying, and I respect that. In the meeting, what came up, not the meetings that we had, is we felt that it was 2 years. And the whole process got pushed a year because of
COVID.
our inability to address it last school year. Had it been implemented per the committee work, it would have been proposed for 2022. And that's the reason I'm saying bringing that up. It's not a general thing of, let's find out what the students want. we went through a very extensive process, and that process produced a result that the recommendation was to start it with the class of 2022. And I just want, there were a number of families involved, there were students involved, a lot of community, and I want to see whether changing that is warranted. I don't consider 2022 a change from the committee output. I consider this a change from the committee output. That's why I'm questioning it.
Sure, and that definitely helps to understand that, and I support that. And I guess, I want feedback, but it's actually, for me, the most important part is awareness. It's not, I do appreciate the feedback. We always want feedback, but it's an awareness. We're just talking to students and families that are freshman, sophomore, junior, and not so much of an awareness. That's more my concern. So, because if they're aware, then they're able to give that feedback.
I would just say that the committee decided that because the class of 22 was sophomores. When we were talking about it, we were talking about making the change and not impacting the seniors and the juniors. So in essence, what's coming out of this is what the committee was recommending. It's just that we could not possibly process this during March, April, May, June of last year. And so the recommendation of the committee was based on where kids are in the high school. If we're going to make this change, we can't impact the seniors. We don't want to impact the juniors. So we would start it with the class of 2022, which when we discussed last year was the sophomores. So even though the year has changed, the year in the school hasn't changed. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
It's interpretive. It's interpretive, and so it's fine.
No, my point is that my point of view is that didn't happen in private. So,
I agree.
although it's taking time to go through this official thing, I think based on who was present in the meeting, the feedback that we got, the parents that were involved, the discussion that took place at the time, I don't think this is going to come at people out of the blue.
Right.
So
I also appreciate what you're saying. One of the things I'm hearing you say is that, and I appreciate this, that this should not be seen as a negative. It should be seen as a positive. This is a good thing for our kids, for our school, for the culture in our school. And it's possible that there's a significant number of students in the class of 2022 who feel, and families who feel like this is a great thing, and why are we not experiencing the change? Because change, although often is seen as bad, this, I believe, the committee certainly felt like this was a very positive change. And so I do see where Tom's coming from on that, but I was just kind of clarifying that one piece. So in terms of the policy and the first reading, we still have to talk about service academies. That's the second question. And Rick, we did have some information on that, right, about service academies?
One school I was able to confirm with that individual was that Bedford is not supplying rank, and we know kids are getting into service academies from Bedford. I was not able to confirm with Sauhegan yet, but I can. They are getting kids into service academies either, and they widely advertise they do not rank. So those are two just local schools.
So the sense that I got from one of the emails that we received, and it's in the public record, was from it should be, or maybe it wasn't to all of us. Was it just to you, Rick?
I believe it was just to me, and I shared it with you.
Right, and he knew it was being
Yep.
shared. It was from somebody who's a representative of one of the service academies and works with our students to get in. And he felt very strongly that having rank there really helps our students get accepted to the service academies. So I do believe this is something that we are going to have to decide and be willing to deal with the repercussions of, if there are negative repercussions, if we were to get rid of it.
that did go to everybody.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it didn't, sorry. It was to the policy committee, basically. So we can share that email with you, and that way you can have a little bit more information on that. For me personally, I would vote on this policy with or without the exception. I don't have a stake in that game. I feel like, I think our kids really do well, and sort of, I want to make that process easy, but I am concerned about if it's not required for service academies and we open that can of worms, then people might say, well, I need it for this and I need it for that. So I do have some concerns about continuing to keep the exception, I'd need to have more information from the service academies. I
Yeah,
think.
that's my concern
Right.
is creating these exceptions opens the door for appearing to be a discriminatory policy.
However, that being said, being able to attend a service academy is such an honor and so important that I don't want to.
Oh, I agree,
You
I
know,
agree. That's why rather than ask the school, I'd like to, at one point, when this was put in, we had received a copy of a letter from the service academies that stated clearly, whether it was enforced or not, we can't say, but
Right.
it said that to be considered, you have to have a published class rank in the top 15% of your school.
And we just don't know if that's true anymore.
Correct.
So we need to find that out. Okay.
Yeah, I think we need to fact check it because we've heard both sides many times. But I would have a hard time voting for this with it in because either you rank or you don't. And to me, that's kind of a black and white. And so I don't think that it should be in there because then somebody's going to get a rank and then they're going to tell somebody that that's what their rank is, even though they shouldn't. And it's either we rank or we don't. That's just, I think it's a black and white on this one.
Okay.
I agree completely, and, I think we do have to do due diligence to get that information, but like we talked about, and you kind of alluded to, even though you have to fill out a waiver and a non-disclosure, it doesn't guarantee you're even applying. I just worry that I'm going to show up and say, well, I'm going to apply, and so I want my rank, and all the work that will entail, either you rank or you don't, and I agree completely. I'd rather see it not in there, but I just want to make sure that it's.
Well, that's good information
Okay.
for the policy committee. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So we just need to accept it for first reading. So all in favor?
Can I ask
6-0.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Do you want notification from all of the service academies, just one, or, because there's, my sense is they're gonna tell you that it's important, but yet we're still gonna have to reconcile the fact that other schools are getting them in. But I can still I'm sure they're gonna be happy to provide me with whatever. I didn't know what was kind of like the acceptable number
I
of.
think, go ahead, Kate.
Rick, is it possible in asking maybe a couple different academies if, like, what their percentages are? What percentages are they accepting students who were ranked and not ranked? That might help us a little too.
Rick, you dropped a card.
Yeah, I
into
saw
the
that.
table.
Middle school student walk off. My ID badge, she knows where it could go.
Okay. I missed that a little bit. Okay, good. Are we good? Did you answer that question? I'm sorry, I got distracted for a second.
Yep, that's good.
So hard to pay attention the whole time. Okay, next one is policy GADA, employment references and verification. This would be for second reading, so I need a motion to amend policy GADA and employment references and verification. I don't know why this motion is written this way. To amend policy GADA, employment references and verification in its entirety by replacing it with a copy provided with the agenda and accept the second reading as amended?
Yeah, it's just saying, rather than listing all the amendments, just saying.
Okay.
The one that's,
Okay, just replace it.
We're acknowledging that we're going to open it for review, basically.
I don't think we have this policy. Isn't this new?
This is a new one,
This is a new policy.
but we read it the first
Yeah, it
reading
had
in
a first
February.
read.
Okay, but the amendment is, okay, I gotcha. So can somebody do?
So moved.
Thank you. Second, Beth, thank you. Tom moved that and Beth seconded it for Dawn's sake. Okay, so, Beth, can you speak to this one since you're?
Sure. We had actually talked about this and made this change from the first reading, but I know it was way back in February. So the scratch marks there, the only thing I didn't change is, if you imagine all of the, scratch lines are gone, it would read, in addition, this prohibition does not apply if at least one of the following conditions applies. So it has the word apply twice in the same sentence. So but it gets the point across. We're basically removing the first and second parts, and that was by board request and from the discussion. I think that was the only thing that came from February, and it hasn't been changed since. That's the first time you're seeing it with that language removed.
Are you uncomfortable with the double applies?
I didn't like it, but I didn't really mess with it too much. I mean, we didn't really talk about, we just said to remove, so maybe it does not apply if at least one of the following conditions.
Oh, yeah, actually, you could take out that first line and just put, if you put or after A, B, C, and D, because right now or is only after C. If you, does not apply if, and then you start with A, this matter has been officially closed.
Oh, I gotcha.
Or
yeah.
B.
So is the spirit of this okay? Because we can wordsmith it in policy a little bit, and we can play with it and bring it back. So basically, we can note in the minutes that we need to
Either put the ors
make
or
the,
change
you know,
the applies.
transitional
Yep.
sentence to make more just cleaner. But is the spirit of the policy fine with everyone? It's a new policy, and
Were 1 and 2 in there because of prior law that's now changed?
it was in the sample
It was the sample
policy,
policy.
and it was removed because it basically creates the idea that the prohibition doesn't apply if
If you've reported it.
if it's been reported, but there's no outcome, then the person could send a reference, and we don't feel like that's great. We feel like it should be that the matter's been closed, or there's been some sort of investigation where there's been insufficient. These make sense to us, but those top two don't.
And Gina,
Is
my
that clear?
my mom brain, did they already approve this in Hollis improvement without it? I'm trying to remember.
Yep, so Hollis approved it with numbers 1 and 2 removed.
Yeah.
Have we
Thank
had
you.
legal review with 1 and 2
And
removed?
legal reviewed it and did not, basically didn't see the point of 1 and 2. They knew the intent, but didn't feel that that added strength to the policy and felt very comfortable with us removing it.
Okay, yeah, the only reason I want legal review is whether it creates a liability for us
Sure.
by reporting.
Yeah, so when Hollis approved it, I think last fall, I had legal review it for Hollis. Whether or not something's come up in the past year, I don't know, but at the time, that's the opinion they provided.
Okay, and since it's been since February, we'll bring it back with those, we'll clean up that language. All right, is there any other comments? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? There's nobody here. Okay, 6-0. The next one is policy DAF, and that would be, I would need a motion to accept for second reading, policy DAF, administration of federal grant funds as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Tom, seconded by Beth. I don't believe that there were any changes made to this.
There were.
Oh, wait,
and
we changed the they
just
and
the-
their.
yeah.
We
To
did
the his, her, to, yep.
change his, her to they
And
and
so
their.
since everyone's had 6 months to read it, I'm going to quiz everyone on the details of it. But I think the his, her, I changed it in February, so in fact, I forgot that I had even changed it. So after a policy meeting, I was really proud of myself for already having made the change. But I feel like it was only in one spot. So pretty much this is just about as presented other than the his, her.
So it was as presented, but we changed the pronoun
Yeah.
to be consistent with what we're trying to do with pronouns in our policy.
Yep.
Are there any comments on this one?
The only concern I have is this references a lot of DOE type policy that I wonder if those are still the right things, because so much has gone on in the last year or so with DOE, and you know, I'm looking at the Buy American thing and other requirements. Have we checked with NHSBA to find out if this version is still the right one?
This is the right version. And it is the one that we are required to have in order to receive.
So this is the latest and greatest?
This is the latest and greatest, yeah.
Okay.
It just came out last year.
Pardon me?
It just came out last year. New Hampshire kind of got a little hand slap.
When you say last year, but are you talking
2019,
the late last year or early last year?
about a year ago. September. It came out with
Okay.
fall. sample policies,
Okay,
and they have not made a change to it.
okay.
But it is required that we have a policy in order to accept all the federal funds that we
Yeah.
accept.
So that's second reading. Any other things? All those in favor? 6-0. Okay, and is this our last one?
Wellness.
EFD.
Yeah, okay, so now we have the first reading of policy EFD wellness. So I need a motion to accept the first reading of policy EFD wellness as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Tom, seconded by Beth. This is the first time we're seeing this policy. We don't have this policy. Gina, are you prepared to talk to this, or are you good?
Yeah. So, some of you may recall, who were former members of policy committee, that a few years back we considered a wellness policy that was presented by the wellness committee. It was adopted in Hollis, it was adopted in Brookline. It was not brought before the co-op board for a variety of reasons. However, we continue to be audited by the DOE, and we needed to make a change to our elementary policies to include like a metric of some sort that included some SMART goals, and we needed to have one in our co-op, or all of our school lunch programs as an SAU would be in jeopardy. So this, by not having it in co-op, we are negatively impacting Hollis and Brookline Elementary school lunch program. And one concern was that potentially we need to remove ourselves from the school lunch program. Since then, we have a new food service director. We are not losing money anymore. We are making money in our food service program. So there's less of a urgency to consider removing ourselves from the school lunch program. In addition to studying that a couple years ago, we determined that we did not have the storage space necessary in order to run our own food program. Anyway, we don't have storage for anything, much less
So in order to be part of the federal school lunch program, we need to be in compliance with their policy guidelines. And this policy puts us in compliance with that.
Correct.
And allows us to be part of this school lunch program. And we have not had this policy for the past few years because we had some concerns. We were considering some other options. But now it seems like we have 2 districts in this SAU 41 that need the school lunch program. And it's obviously the school lunch program that we're still using in the high school, in the co-op. And certainly during the year of COVID, it's not the year to decide to do your own school lunch program, right? So
especially as school lunches are
When it's free.
offered free
Yeah.
to all
Yes, they are
families
free
this
to all
year through the end of the
Usually
year.
not the time.
free lunch.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a free lunch, but there is one right now until December 31st. So this is the first reading of a very lengthy policy, so I would really love to kind of just approve it for first reading, and then this gives our board members now an opportunity to dig into this and see if there's any major concerns. Has this policy in its entirety, the way it's written now, been passed in Hollis and Brookline?
No.
No, so they're still working through it?
Correct.
Okay. And in order to be in compliance with this, do the policies have to be the same? Like, can the co-op have a different language, a little bit different language than the other 2?
Yes, there
As
are.
long as we have the things in it that
That
they
are
want, the
required.
SMART goals and the,
Yes.
okay. So, all right. Any other questions, comments?
I just want to say there's a lot of stuff, several things in here that are very questionable to me.
It does not read like a traditional policy, and we're being asked by the DOE specifically to have it in this format. So there are certainly some aspects that just seem strange to me for presence in a policy, but we've gotten our hands slapped.
So, so would it be, I think the best way to proceed would be for you to read it, for those members of the board to read it, to come up with questions, and to send us an email list, which are fine to send to the whole board. It's fine for, we want it to be open to the public, and we can then talk about it in our policy committee and make those changes. But also, some of them we may not be able to make because they would be in conflict with what the DOE needs. But I don't want to spend a board meeting going through those kinds of questions. So I would love to handle it via the policy committee. Does that
Can
make
you,
sense? Does that make sense to everyone? Like, does it?
Can you get for us, or do you have access to this USDA Smart Snacks regulation?
Sure. I can get that.
Great. Does that work for you?
Yeah, no really is fine, but sure.
Gina, is it drastically different than the one that they originally sent out and
Yes.
that we looked at?
Yep.
I mean, you've compared the two, so it doesn't help to go back and look at some of the
Yeah,
questions
so
we
they
had
did,
on the old
so the
one.
wellness committee created this, so they didn't redline it, but it's so different
Okay.
that it was sort of difficult to redline it,
Yeah,
which is why
because I
they
was on the
decided
first
not
one,
to.
I remember there was a couple of high points that we were questioning because we were high school and different, but,
Mhm.
okay.
This looks like something that was written with lobbyist support.
And I have no problem with us digging into it, but I'd like our first pass at it. I'd like everybody to take time with it so that we don't spend time on things that we really can't change. If there's things that we can. Does that make sense? Okay, so all in favor? 6-0. Great.
I do have one request that would maybe help with background going forward. There's the section 3, section 1, nutrition promotion, where it says you have to do at least 5 other things.
Yes.
It would be helpful to, on those lists and things, it would be helpful to find out whether by our own choice we fulfill those things or whether it will require a change.
We can definitely figure that out.
We could
That
do
was,
that?
well, that was something we had talked about even
we
jokingly
were
a little
kind of
bit. Yeah,
wondering
I mean,
which
because
ones we were doing.
some of them, I know that it's already, I know
It would be
firsthand it's
helpful to
already done, and
understand is
some are, yeah.
what,
That came up as a,
what
yep.
in here would drive
Okay.
change
Great.
versus we meet it hands down. We
Right.
get it,
And we are currently meeting all of these.
So
Just
we
so you know.
already, we are doing it, right?
Okay.
But, right, so there's no changes that we would really need to make.
No.
Okay.
So this is
That-
just
that-
putting.
That helps a lot, thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Okay, at this point, we need, so if anyone has some highlights from Hollis, wait, am I done? Are we done with the policies? We are, okay. So, HB highlights, is there anyone that has anything that they've been able to, I can't go to anything because we're not allowed, so.
Did Eversource come?
They, partially, yeah, the poles are up, the wires are
The
being.
poles
run,
are up,
yeah.
the wires are up, and they are scheduled to be here Friday afternoon to bring power to the field, and then the construction company can come back and bring it to the lights.
Can we have a nighttime Halloween party on the field with social distancing?
If you can plan it and like.
I w-
Yeah.
In costume.
I will tell you that a coworker of mine who attends, whose kids are in Sauhegan, were here for, played on the turf for an event, and they said it was just phenomenal, a phenomenal experience.
Thank you.
Yes, Beth?
Sure, I was gonna say, having student athletes, I have been able to go to some games, and that's been an awesome experience, but I just wanted to share, and hopefully it's appreciated by Rick and Tim. I have been able to sub on both the campuses. I have been here a lot more, and like, I know I was subbing right next door to Gina the other day, maybe twice, but it's actually been a really great experience. It's been, sub plans and support and students and everything has been very smooth. So that's my feedback to encourage others, whether board members or people at home or parents. I mean, it's so very needed to have subs, and that seems like one of the biggest challenges or stressors that I see in administration and staff in order to keep things going as smooth and amazing as they are, and to keep all 4 of my children in schools smoothly. So, but it really, all jokes aside, it's been a very, very positive experience. It's been awesome to see teachers in action and how they're adjusting things and overcoming obstacles, seeing the administration do the same, seeing students do the same. So I've been really enjoying that experience, and I would encourage others that may be interested, even if it's like, like Andy's letter had said to the community, 1 day a week, 1 day a month, it doesn't even matter. It's so worth it and so helpful. Even just a single day is helpful. So.
Great. Anybody else?
I think we did recognize it, but I think Lynn Willette's achievement is sort of like
Absolutely.
the cherry on the Sunday. She's been doing some amazing things for years here, and I'm really happy to see it getting formal recognition, because the contribution she's made in so many areas has been recognized here, but not necessarily to the extent it should be, so I'm really happy about that.
Anybody else? Okay, and Beth, process observer?
Sure. We really did zoom right through the beginning very quickly. The one area, I mean, we did discuss, some things like class size took a little bit, but it was all expected and built in. We're still way ahead of schedule. The only thing I noticed took a little bit more time than was actually scheduled was in the deliberations. When we have that many policies or things to talk about, we definitely spent a little more time there than scheduled, but again, still ending quite early, ahead of schedule.
Awesome. Thank you all. Does anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Do we have a non-public?
We do not have a non-public,
Okay.
but we do have a non-meeting, so board members need to stay, but I need a motion to adjourn before we get to that.
So moved.
So moved by Beth, seconded by Cindy. Any discussion on that? All in favor? I don't think you can discuss adjournment, actually. 6-0. Great.
I'd like
Thank
to
you.
discuss it.
We have a non-meeting regarding negotiations, and I need to use the ladies' room before.